The General Land Office. The General Land Office's main role is to manage Texas's publicly owned lands by negotiating and enforcing leases for the use of the land, and sometimes by making sales of public lands. Royalties and proceeds from land sales are added to the Permanent School Fund, which helps to fund public education and which has received $6.1 billion since 1854 and currently has an endowment of over $48 billion. Over $700 million a year is earned from public lands to help finance public school education. Texas owns and manages 20.3 million acres, including open beaches and submerged land 10.3 miles into the Gulf of Mexico. The current commissioner of the General Land Office is George B. Bush. He was first elected in 2014 and re-elected in 2018. In 2021, Bush announced that he would not seek re-election in 2022, but would instead run for the position of Texas Attorney General in the Republican primary. The Republic of Texas established the General Land Office in 1836, making the GLO the oldest existing Texas public agency. The agency's constitutional purpose was to superintend, execute, and perform all acts touching or respecting the public lands of Texas. One former home of the General Land Office, the old Land Office Building, is a registered historic place and now serves as the Texas State Capitol Visitor Center. The agency is also responsible for keeping records of land grants and titles, and for issuing maps and surveys of public lands. The Spanish Archives section of the Land Office is the depository of records of 4,200 Spanish and Mexican land grants. The Constitution of the Republic of Texas honored all grants made by Spain and Mexico that were deemed valid by the Republic. Later, the state followed suit. Valid Spanish and Mexican grants cover 26,280,000 acres within the present boundaries of Texas. Some of these grants have received special confirmation by the state legislature, but most of them stand on the original titles from the governments of Spain and Mexico. When Texas was annexed into the United States in 1845, it kept control of all of its public lands from its time as a sovereign state. Texas is the only U.S. state to control all its own public lands. All federal lands in Texas were acquired by purchase, for example, military bases, or donation, such as national parks. Texas's public lands were significantly enlarged by the U.S. Submerged Lands Act of 1953 and the resolution of the tidelands controversy. Tidelands are the territory between the tide line of seacoasts and lands under the sea beyond the low water limit of the tide, considered the territorial waters of a nation. Texas's historical territorial waters originated with the Republic, so the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in 1960 that Texas owned territory out to 3 leagues, 10.35 miles from its coastline, more than the 3 miles controlled by other coastal states. These lands and the oil and gas deposits beneath them are managed by the GLO. The General Land Office also oversees the Veterans Land Board and the Veterans Land Fund, which loans money to Texas veterans to buy rural land. Since 2011, the GLO has managed the Alamo in San Antonio. The management of the Alamo was transferred to the General Land Office after allegations of mismanagement were directed at the prior manager, the Daughters of the Republic of Texas. The Alamo Cenotaph, also known as the Spirit of Sacrifice, is a monument commemorating the Battle of the Alamo of the Texas Revolution, which was fought at the adjacent Alamo Mission. The monument was erected in celebration of the centenary of the battle and bears the names of those known to have fought there on the Texas side. During the 1936 Texas Centennial Celebration, the state of Texas provided $100,000 for the monument, commissioned from local sculptor Pompeo Copini. It was entitled The Spirit of Sacrifice and incorporates images of the Alamo garrison leaders and 187 names of known Alamo defenders. Later research has shown some listed on the cenotaph were not there, and the total number of Alamo combatants has risen with newer research. An inscription on the cenotaph says, "Erected in memory of the heroes who sacrificed their lives at the Alamo, March 6, 1836, in the defense of Texas. They chose never to surrender nor retreat. These brave hearts, with flags still proudly waving, perished in the flames of immortality, that their high sacrifice might lead to the founding of this Texas." In 2018, the San Antonio City Council approved a $450 million redevelopment plan for the Alamo, marking a new chapter in the nearly 300-year-old site. The vote came after months of debate by city officials and residents over certain controversial elements of the plan, such as closing streets to vehicle traffic, moving the cenotaph, and using fences or barriers to control public access to the site. Here you see an image of the proposal and its goals, what it would have looked like. The idea was somewhat controversial, leading even fellow Republicans, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick and Land Commissioner George P. Bush, to disagree publicly with one another. Here's another model of the planned renovations. The Alamo Master Plan, which attempts to reclaim as much as possible of the historic Alamo footprint, calls for closing those streets in order to recreate the open plaza that existed behind the walls of the Alamo during the siege and battle in 1836. In other words, the plan was to make the Alamo site look more like it might have looked in 1836 when the battle was actually fought. Texas Land Commissioner George P. Bush defended the renovation plans. He said relocating the 1930s monument, meant as an empty tomb for Texas revolutionaries, was essential to keeping it from crumbling. He also said the cenotaph's new location would be more historically accurate than its current location north of the Alamo grounds, because the cenotaph's new location was one of the sites where the Mexican forces burned the bodies of Texans killed in the battle. Bush said, so the cenotaph would actually be relocated and moved to where that funeral pyre is, where the revolutionaries' bodies were burned. The cenotaph would actually be fixed for the first time and reconstructed in a way in terms of its foundations so that it's around for hundreds of years. Officials with the city, the Texas General Land Office, and the nonprofit Alamo Trust had said that moving the cenotaph 500 feet to a new location outside the Menger Hotel was vital to allowing the full redevelopment plan to go ahead. However, on September 22, 2021, the 15-member Texas Historical Commission voted 12-2, with one abstention, against moving the cenotaph. The agency, whose commissioners are appointed by the Texas governor, has authority over the Alamo that covers archaeological work, architecture, and the treatment of historic sites. Commission Chair John Now said monuments to the fallen are placed where they fell. In other words, the cenotaph was where it should be, where the defenders of the Alamo fell, and shouldn't be moved to another site. With the plan to move the cenotaph killed by the Texas Historical Commission, the project ceased, and there would be no redevelopment of the Alamo site.